Welcome, everyone. My name is Susan Allen, and I am so thrilled to have you with us today for our latest Lifewave event. This is our 45th show on Lifewave. And today we have the best show of all, not only because we have Dr. John Harmon, who is everyone's favorite guest, of course. Welcome, John.
Thank you very much. My pleasure to be here.
And not only is John just brilliant and so knowledgeable in Lifewave and such a joy, what is most important is that for the last few months, John and I have been discussing the real mechanism of Lifewave patches, which, though I've studied the patents to a degree, I've studied the double-blind studies to a degree, I've studied the science page as much as was reasonable with my other, career and obligations, I have never had the kind of answers that you're going to receive from John today. And John is writing his first book on Lifewave. So by the way, by October of this year, his book will be available, and hopefully before that. Now, the mechanism of the Lifewave patches is a completely different understanding. It's not just what we know about copper peptides, not just what we know about non-transdermal, et cetera, et cetera. This is going really deep into the understanding. So all of your friends who understand medicine and doctors, and they have been really wondering what in the world is Lifewave about. If you take notes, or if you watch our show when it's on YouTube in about 10 days, you'll be able to give them answers that will satisfy them, including all the people you know who are doctors. So I want to remind you, really remind you, that my guests do not diagnose and prescribe for you. They are giving you the information they have that they use with their patients and clients and themselves about the benefits of Lifewave patches. So it's important that you know that. And if you want to go to the science page on Lifewave on the website, you will be able to read all of the patents and all of the science for yourself. And you'll understand that this is a company that has been in business now in 100 countries. It's a $100 million company. It's been around for about 20 years, and it's real. And today, John Harmon is going to explain exactly what that means. So please tell us about the mechanism, John, about the mechanism in general for the patches.
Yeah, that's I call it the most brilliant biohack ever in the history of people, for David to do that. And so I place him in the category of Nikola Tesla and Einstein for what he has done by recapturing energy we're already making. So when you start sharing these with your friends, you can say, it doesn't need a battery and you don't have to plug it in. And they'll look at you like, what the heck? Well, it's powered by energy you're already making and wasting that goes out into your environment. Not really wasting it, because we get that from other people around us, but people who don't know that, they'll be more impressed. So you ask about the mechanism of how these patches work. And in order to go down that road, I want you to envision in your mind different stones, crystals, table salt, quartz crystals. They all have a very specific structure made up of different minerals. And that's why they're different colors. That's why they have a different structure of the crystal. In science, that is called the crystal lattice structure. Without getting all geeky about gems and stones and crystals, but You have to know just this basic stuff. For example, sodium chloride always breaks apart into perfect squares because of the crystal lattice structure. You go into a gem store, gemologists can say, oh yeah, that's a blah, blah, blah. That's that type of crystal. How do they do it? The color, the shape of the crystals, the shape of the rock. So once you know that, and you know that visible light, white light, when you walk outside, all of the frequencies of the light spectrum are in that white light. David figured out how to selectively pull out, if you will, or reflect back into your body specific frequencies that do different things. When we go outside, what happens? Everybody knows ultraviolet light tells our body to make, we'll do several things, make vitamin D3. It takes a substance that's already in our skin. The frequency of light excites the trillions of nano antennas that we have in our skin a certain way that tells your body to make vitamin D3. Different frequencies of light affect those antennas differently. David captured our bioluminescence, which is what we emit. There's far infrared, near infrared, and visible light. So we actually glow. Japanese researchers figured that out in 2009. We just can't see it with our eyes. So imagine you're looking in night vision goggles and you see this footprint of this human. The different colors are different frequencies. And so when we put one of those patches on, know that each patch has a different crystal lattice structure. It's a different ratio of different amino acids, salts, sugars, stabilized oxygen that form a different type of crystal. So the X39s are going to be different than the energy enhancers. The X49s are going to be different than the Aeon because of what's in the patch. Very important to know. Nothing goes from the patch into the body. So they are not transdermal, where like an estrogen patch, you put it on, they tell you, don't let anybody touch it because you're going to get estrogen too. And so they're not that at all. This is totally a quantum leap above that as far as technology. They were able to figure out when we combine these different substances into this patch, what is the crystal lattice structure and what frequency is that going to get back into my body to do something? So to turn on a pathway with light, like a light switch, all of a sudden something happens. And you've probably all felt it if you've been using these patches very long. Yesterday in my clinic, one of our patients who's doing neurofeedback and laser could hardly get out of the chair. And I said, wait a second. I went and I put the Icewave patches on him, and he stood up, and he's really tentative, and he was kind of getting ready to brace himself. But he stood straight up and looked at me. And I only tell you that because of how instantly these things happen. People will say, how does it work that fast? And they say, well, because it's not going through digestion and absorption. It's light. How long does it take your light to come on? When you flip the switch, it's instant. So some of these things happen truly instantly. That's the science of how do we get something without getting anything? We don't get anything from the patch, but so what do we get? Well, we get our own energy, our own frequencies reflected back into us that do something.
Now, how many times am I going to watch this again and again and again, what John just said, until fully the light goes on in my brain, right? I'm not the only one. Thank you. That's more than I've known for 3 years. I just had my Lifewave 3-year anniversary, and I know I'm many years younger because of the cardiovascular improvements, and everything else is working better. And honestly, I never understood what was going on with the patches. I understood what wasn't happening, all the good things, that were happening because none of the bad stuff was happening. But thank you so much for that. Now we're going to specify the X39 because every single person who I speak to about Lifewave absolutely has to have the X39 and the Eon. Depending on other issues, I use every one of the patches myself in every 24-hour period. I want everybody to know that. My results have been astounding because my commitment has been pretty huge too. So John, would you begin by explaining the mechanism of the X39s?
Sure. Exciting stuff. And when she talked about the book, it's not about Lifewave. It's going to be a reference for not just Lifewave people, but for people to understand about these peptides, but specifically going into detail about what they do, how to get them, and all that stuff. So when we place the X39 on our body, it starts signaling our skin to make more of a very important peptide, which is, well, peptides are signaling molecules. Whenever someone says peptide, think my body needs to get a message somewhere and for something to happen. And if I don't have a nerve that goes to that thing, I have to get the message there. So peptides are signaling molecules that tell your body to do something. The GHK copper peptide is what gets elevated when you place the X39 to make and release more GHK copper peptide. Copper peptides are very active and their structure makes it so. On one end, you have the copper, and then on the other end, you have some amino acids. And so that makes this hugely versatile in being able to turn on different pathways in our body. And when I say emergency response chemical, our body makes it ample when we're young, and it makes a lot if we get injured, because what has to happen when we're injured? Well, if we get a finger cut off, if we get a big gash, we have to take care of we have to attract the capillaries into the tissue. We have to make new stem cells. We have to rapidly repair collagen. So that's one of the really huge things. If you look up the GHK copper peptide on PubMed or National Institute of Health, that you're going to see studies and things that were done like that. But I would say the most popular thing that they're used for outside of what we do with the X39 is in skin and hair and nails. Those are actually put into products for skin, hair, and nails because they help us regrow hair, they help change the color back, and they help smooth wrinkles and the depth of the wrinkles because of their collagen repair. So review, the X39 activates production of the GHK copper peptide, which is known as an emergency response chemical or peptide. It signals lots of pathways in the body to fix itself. When we get older, we have a lot of stuff that needs to be fixed. The battle between, do I have enough stem cells to repair things or not? When you keep in mind that our bodies intentionally target 50 to 70 billion cells per day for death and destruction and recycling. It's called apoptosis. Cells will naturally be culled out. So if you don't have enough resources, enough stem cells, now we got to put up with those dysfunctional tissues and organs a little bit longer. And now you get more cells that are dysfunctional that can't be replaced. And now you might have a whole tissue. If you get enough of that, then things start to die. So with elevating your stem cells, that's the biggie thing, that this is the crescendo of what, X39 does, is that it activates your body's production of stem cells. It's all part of this emergency response because, hey, something happened and I need to repair. So stem cells can become anything. If you have recently broken your bone, a bone, the stem cells are probably going to focus on that area and morph into bone. You need them in your liver, if you need them in your skin, in your eyes, wherever are the most pressing issues that one has, those stem cells are going to migrate to that. Here's what I want to tell you. You cannot dictate that. You can't say, okay, I want them to go to my painful cartilage in my knee because my doctor says I need knee replacement and it hurts all the time. That's not how it works. It goes to the stem cells will go to the most pressing issues. If you're not already measuring it, or if it's not even something you can measure, you are not going to know what's happening. And it might be something where you say, yeah, I used them for a month and I don't feel anything. I didn't feel anything for 2.5 months. My big changes started to happen at about 5 months. So consider using X39 at least 1 month for every decade of your life before you make any kind of judgments.
Now, you're saying something interesting. However, I've discovered, and I've done it to the best of my double-blind study ability, asking different people to do different things. People who were just using the X39 in the back of their neck or below their belly button had different, and it took longer to get results than people who decided to do what I decided to do, which is put the patch exactly where I wanted the results faster. Now, I don't have a laboratory and I don't have 20 sets of twins to do a true double blind with. However, I will tell you, and anybody who's asked me to see my 1.5 pages of localized patching protocols and results has received it from me. As you know, I send out lots of different emails. You just have to email me, susan@susanallen.org. And whether it is the placebo effect, 30% of the time we know everything's a placebo. So if you have some feedback on that, John, please let me know.
On the length of time that it may take someone to
the localized. So you're saying, which we know from David, that stem cells have an intelligence, and stem cells are going to go to the part of the body that has the most critical issue, and they're going to begin their repair there, right? So that's what you said.
Right.
For me to paraphrase it.
Yeah,
however, I discovered that if I did localized patching and put certain patches directly over the part of the body that needed help quickly, that I had much faster results than friends of mine who didn't want to do that or forgot to do that, and they just used this X39, the back of the neck and below, or the below the belly button. So it's interesting to me. In any case, all we care about is feeling better, right? That's the real goal here.
Yeah, and sometimes if we think something is going to happen, it does. That's that placebo effect you were talking about. But David has always said, the reason we have these points in the booklets with each of the patches is that's where we did the research. So, and then he says you can put them anywhere. So I actually did a combination of that, Susan, because when I first started, first of all, I'm a man and men think more is better. If one pill is good, 6 must be able to really handle it better. So I thought, I'm going to put, since I could feel something funny in my heart, I'm going to put one on the back of the neck, but I'm also going to put one right over the heart, thinking that something would happen faster. It turns out, after I had finished, I had 2 stress echocardiograms over a period of about 1.5 years. And I asked David if wearing an additional patch, there's added benefit. And he said, it's not a straight line. You don't get double for wearing two patches. He said, for each one that you use, you get about a 20% bump in that peptide, whatever it's designed. Each patch is designed to elevate a different peptide so that something happens in the body. So I did both. I had good results as well. I always tell all my patients, if this is just really convenient, and these are two very important acupuncture points, governing vessel, conception vessel, if you want to put them.
But you know, if somebody has a crisis, right? For example, that's what I'm referring to. So yeah. I have a dear friend, and he had a collapsed lung, and he was in the hospital, and it was a crisis and what have you. So I said, yeah, sure, he can put the patch on the back of his neck, but we know it's his left lung. Doesn't it make sense to put it on his left lung? Well, I'll tell you something. In 24 hours, he was out of agony. He never had pain again. Now, it took a while for him to heal, but he never had pain again. I had really horrible acid reflux last year. Now, I could have left the X39 where it was, or I could have left the Eon where it was, but I still had this acid reflux. If it was at night, I moved the Eon right where the pain was, right here, if you can see, right there. And in 5 minutes, perfectly healthy. Then I would put it on my back in the place where the pain was, because acid reflux can be front and back. 5 minutes, 2 minutes, pain gone. If it was, you know, the other time of the day. So the patches were on another part of my body already, but it wasn't until I moved them into the location that I found almost instant pain relief. So because we have people who, I don't feel it, Susan, what do you mean? I listen to all your shows. I don't feel it. I want to make sure everybody gets the remarkable benefits, and John does as well. So I would say any of those options, leave it in the recommended positions in the booklet, or if you have an urgent problem, you might want to do what I do. And you might even want to do what John does, use two.
I've done that as well. Sometimes somebody will come in and they'll have hip bursitis, very painful and long lasting. Put an Eon patch on that, and they look at me like, you're a magician. You know, the pain goes away really, really quickly with that Eon because it cuts down inflammation, and most pain comes from inflammation.
Absolutely. Now, I just want to remind everybody, we don't do questions during these shows. And of course, you're always welcome to email me or email our guests. So you can, just know that, and please don't raise your hand, because that's not the content of this show. Now, the next question for you, John. Nanocrystals, crystal structures, very complicated for many of us. So what would be the simplest way to explain that there aren't stem cells in the stem cell patches? There's stem cell activation patches. There are no stem cells in them. The Eon, for example, my second best friend, elevates SOD, but there's no SOD in the patch. So if you could explain to us, John, in a way that we could all understand.
Imagine you have a magic dial. This is my health dial. And when I click it here, I'm going to get a decrease in inflammation. If I click it here, I'm going to get more stem cells. When you're going through your little tray of patches, you're kind of doing that because each patch is designed specifically so that you will get a specific frequency reflected back into your body, like when you go into a jewelry store and you're looking at diamonds. They're clear, but you're seeing different colors because the white light is refracted or separated, and now it registers as a color when we see that wavelength of light. Each patch brings a different wavelength of light back into us. And that's why we call them photobiomodulation patches, because it's light therapy on that nanoscale. We can't see it. It's not like a, red light therapy. We can't see those frequencies, but I can't see them when they're, when there's a lot of them coming off of someone. My daughter can see that. I cannot. I can feel it, but we can't see it. Just when you know that each patch will give you a different light switch that turns on inside of you, so to speak.
Say that again, please.
From each patch, you will get different frequencies of what you are emitting, like a dial. It's just the same energy, except the rest of it goes out into your surroundings. The patch reflects a specific frequency back into you. And that is what signals your body, and it's through those nano antennas on the skin. And if you go back and watch Dr. Stephen Haltenwanger, he was the researcher for Lifewave. There is a YouTube video, Vimeo, where he's talking about these nano antennas on the skin, and on that atomic level, they look like Wi-Fi antennas. And so we have trillions of them in our skin, and the patches give back a different frequency that excites these, or is received by these antennas that signal our body to do something. Just like with vitamin D, just like for melanin, you go outside, your body says, holy cow, we got to put some pigment into this white guy's skin. He's going to get sunburned. And so it's the same process, but it's done with a patch that gives you the frequency. The sun has everything in it. So there are certain frequencies coming from the sun that will signal different things in our skin. As far as the nanocrystals, you will get different frequencies from each combination of whatever's in that patch. There's your dial. You go in the morning, you look it up, okay, X39, I get this result is the GHK copper peptide. Then I pull out the Aeon patch. It actually tells my body, cut it out with that inflammation, cool it down. You don't need that. Our body, it's appropriate to get inflamed after an injury because you got to call in all of the components to fix it. But after that, it's destructive. The Aeon pairs well with the X39 because stem cells are attracted to areas of inflammation like a moth to a light. If the inflammation is too great, it's like a moth to a flame, and some of those stem cells will die. And this is why medical doctors, when they did stem cell injections, they could say there's a chance they won't work because they can't give you corticosteroids, because corticosteroids are anti-regenerative. And now you got a crapshoot. You have it's a wash. We're going to kill the stem cells, but we pull down the inflammation. So if you use Aeon with the X39, more of your own stem cells are going to stay viable and alive with less inflammation. Inflammation, not information.
Now, I don't have this as one of our prepared questions, but I know you know the answer. What would be like one sentence about why using the X39 plus the Aeon is the smart way to go compared to stem cell injections?
Okay. One, maybe two. The stem cells that we naturally make in our body are attracted to inflammation, but if the inflammation is too great, the stem cells will die. Aeon cools down, cuts off, lowers the inflammation so that more of your stem cells will live. It's all about how many, if your inflammation is really a lot and severe, even though they're your own stem cells, they're attracted out to that inflammation because they know there's something there that needs to be fixed. But if it's too much, they will die. So increased inflammation gives you a decrease of stem cells. Decreased inflammation, increased stem cells.
Wow.
Teeter-totter, teeter-totter. The more of this, the less of that. The more of that, the less of this.
And that's why it's so essential that when we use the X39 or the X49, we always want to make sure that during a 24-hour period, we use the Eon as well. So, John, tell us now about the X49, if you would.
All right. I love actually testing people on the X49, and I'll briefly tell you how to do that to test to see how 5G is affecting them. But the X49 elevates a different peptide, and it's the daughter peptide of the GHK copper peptide. It is very beneficial for brain, heart, muscle. I'm turning 69 in a few days. And since the X49 came out, I've actually been able to build muscle mass at almost 70 that I could never do before. I mean, I would work, and I'm kind of tall and, lengthy. And it's not like I have ever really been able to build a lot of muscle, but here I am, almost 70, and I'm actually building muscle. And how do I know that? I've actually had two of my neighbors. My wife and I were working out in the front yard, and I got a tank top on, and I got one of those lengthy tree trimmers. And my neighbor from across the street asked me what I've been doing. He said, what the heck? And then the other neighbor, we were working on some landscaping lighting, and I was carrying something, and he reached up and felt my muscles. I can tell you 100%, no man has ever done that to me in my entire life. And so I'm going, well, I thought I was, but you can't see yourself from different angles. So if you're, getting up there in age, you want to maintain muscle mass and maybe even build some, maintain stamina or increase stamina, then the X49 is for you. But here's another thing. And Dr. Stacy Holwiger and I did a review of 4 of the studies. One of them was how the X49 study showed that there's bone density replacement while using that X49. And I did the review on that study. You'll find the link. It's actually on my YouTube channel, just Dr. John Harmon. And you'll find that Dr. Stacy and Dr. Harmon combined, we did the review of those studies. So the X49, stamina, muscle, but also brain. And one last thing, it repairs the inside lining of our cardiovascular system. It's affected in that. That's called the intima. For those of you who want to know, but you don't have to know that. Just know that the inside lining that has to stay what? Slick and continuous, or bad things happen. So it's maintaining that inside lining of the cardiovascular system.
Thank you. And, the whole point of the lining of different organs, I didn't know anything about that. I never thought of it, even though my father was a surgeon. He didn't talk about it. And then Wendy was saying, well, it's a good thing, Susan, you use the aloe vera, not just for your skin, but did you know that, there is a collagen issue in the lining of certain organs? I believe she said the lung, for example. So there's so much that we're building every single day that we're using the X39, the X49, and the Eon during a 24-hour period. So now I know, John, one of your favorite patches, which I started using again because of you, is glutathione.
Yes.
And it's essential because of the connection between low or no glutathione in your system with chronic illness. So talk about how that works, since now we know there's no glutathione in the patch.
Right.
Speak about that.
Before I do that, just remember this: the level of glutathione in your cells is directly related to your lifespan. That's how important high levels of glutathione are. And what Susan just said, there is a strong correlation with low levels of glutathione with illness and disease and organs getting diseased. Another thing, people with high glutathione levels don't tend to get infections, viral stuff. Here's why. Imagine glutathione is the protector of the realm. It's watching out like a vigilant soldier, waiting for somebody to steal electrons from something. That's called oxidative stress. Every process in our body is about moving electrons. Everything. We eat food so we can get electrons. When we have those, we have enough fuel. Just think of that as our fuel. Our tissues are made of substances. Our organs, our skin, they all have cells that are made up of certain molecules and have certain structure that is vulnerable to the ionizing rays of the sun, to eating out of a box in a bag. One thing about that, when we eat something out of a box or a bag, you are eating electron stealers. When you eat fresh food from nature, you're eating electron donors. Stealers or donors? Stealers or donors? The more you lose electrons out of your lens, the faster you will get cataracts. There's a high level of glutathione in our lens, and it's hanging out, this vigilant guard, and some electrons are lost. Okay, I'm going to put them back. Everybody's losing electrons. Put it back, put it back, put it back. And then he goes and gets more, and then goes and fixes the damage. If you have ample glutathione, you can have ample fixing of things during the day. Tissue memory or tissue linings, your lens, everything is subject to the loss of electrons. It's a little more complex than that, but just remember, electron stealers, electron donors, glutathione's a big donor, but the other function it has, it can wrap itself around things that we need to get rid of and pull them out of our body for detoxing. Our patch, now I've had glutathione in my office for a long time. We used to do glutathione pushes, IV type thing, and they were more expensive, but a supplement manufacturer brags, actually on their website, our glutathione supplement will raise your glutathione level up to 10%. And I almost started laughing, because the glutathione patch was tested through blood tests to raise our glutathione level on average 300% within 24 hours. Bam! That's huge. If that's the only thing anybody ever did, they're going to have a lot longer health span as part of their lifespan. We know when we were born, we don't know when we're going to die, but also we don't know when we're going to be not able to do stuff or be bedridden. You have a health span, you have a lifespan.
But remember, I took bedridden dogs that were slated for what boils down to termination.
Mm-hmm.
They started using the X39, the Eon, and the glutathione 12 hours each day. And those dogs came back to life. And these were old dogs.
Yes, absolutely. So using these photobiomodulation patches, you can extend out that health span, which is part of your lifespan, and also your wealth span. there's that too. And you can be spiritual and wealthy at the same time. And that's important to keep in mind. Health span, lifespan, wealth span are all very important things.
That's the name of the game for human life, right? Elevation on all levels. And thank you, John, for mentioning that, because now you're singing my song. Okay, so let's talk about energy enhancers, because one of the big ways to make a difference with older people is they don't have enough energy. You have them use patches that give them more energy by the whole stem cell restoration process, the inflammation reduction elimination process, the glutathione detox process, and now energy enhancers. Now, older people get cheerful from depressed and exhausted and hopeless and all this. They begin to feel cheerful. So tell us, because we know there's who knows what's in these patches and how does it work, John?
That was actually David's first patch. So David was a contractor for the Navy, and they had a problem because Navy SEALs were getting addicted to amphetamines because they had to stay awake on long missions. They needed to elevate their energy level if they were injured. You know, they're out somewhere, they're getting fatigued, they need more energy. So they said, hey, David, we know you invented this specialized battery. We know you're really smart. Could you come up with a way to naturally increase energy production in these Navy SEALs? David went to work. He figured out, remember how I said everything was about movement of electrons? When we eat fats, they have to go in one door in our mitochondria that will convert the fat to energy. Carbohydrates, proteins, they have different doors. So what he figured out, how do we open door number one? And the door number one is beta oxidation. That's fat burning. So he figured out what, now think of this. And this is why I said it's the most brilliant biohack. Have you ever thought about something like this? The answer is going to be no. So he figured out what energy, what frequencies of energy are we emitting into the surrounding? What could I do if I could get some of them back into the body? And then how would I get it into the body? So he came up with this patch system, energy enhancer, that turns on the fat burning process in our cells for a sustained amount of energy. And like Susan was saying, very important for elderly, very important for people who have chronic fatigue syndrome. They need more energy. And when, you know, I'm a pretty energetic person anyway, and, you know, I've worked out my whole life, and I wanted to get my hair cut, and this is only like 3 or 4 months ago. And usually the guy who cuts my hair right next to my barber is busy when I'm leaving, and I hadn't spoken to him directly in about a year and a half, 2 years. And we were chatting. He didn't have anybody. And he looked at me and he said, "You don't fall asleep anymore." I went, oh my gosh. I had totally forgotten that every time I get my hair cut in the afternoon, he would have to keep saying, "Hey, wake up, wake up, wake up." But he doesn't have to do that anymore. And I went, oh my gosh, things that go away, we forget about them because you're not thinking about them. Pain that goes away, energy or fatigue that goes away, and you don't have it. You just go about your life. You don't take inventory every day. So that's why it's important to get a baseline. Where are you right now? Where are your friends when they start using these patches? Because I can guarantee they'll forget. So energy enhancer turns on fat burning. Our bodies, it facilitates our body to burn 300 to 600 calories more per day in fat burning. It's not touted as a weight loss. It's just an energy enhancer. And for those of you who don't already know this, our U.S. men's Olympic swim team in 2004 with Michael Phelps used the energy enhancer patch along with the carnosine patch that we're not talking about today to win all those medals. Got accused of doping. And after the investigation, they said there's nothing that comes from the patch into the body. It's not doping. So the next Olympics, there were over 300 athletes using those patches in the Beijing Olympics.
Wow. Any more information you have about that, John? If you could jot it down, people would love to ask to have it sent to them, that would be most fascinating as we all, think about the Olympics. I have a show with Jim Terrell, a 4-time Olympic athlete. He did a wonderful show, and he's described the fact that he could never still be competing. He was on his way to do like a 10-day canoe trip with all these professional level athletes and across Canada. And he said, there's just no way that I would be able to do that if I didn't have the patches. And by the way, on the actual trip, he stayed completely healthy while other members of the team got terribly sick with COVID, but he was healthy. He was using the X39, the Eon, and a number of other patches.
So yeah, I could say a couple more things about that. Well, remember my statement, everything is about movement of electrons. And we have to have energy to repair our cell linings. We have to have energy to run our liver, our brain. Our brain uses most of the energy during the day. It's always going and thinking all of these thoughts. So if you can signal your body to have more energy, that means more work can be done. You're not going to run out of gas and have to go take your car to the gas station, or your body to the bed for a nap, because you have enough energy that you don't feel like you'd have to do that. And also, you can put them several different places. I like them on the bottom of the feet on what's called the K1 kidney points. You can look that up. You can Google kidney points, type in K1. But it also accelerates on that meridian. It accelerates and facilitates kidneys to work properly on the K1 kidney points. So that's where I've always worn them. Just as a side note, if any of you have experienced redness on the skin when you wear patches, just know that you are very rare, 1 in 10,000. I'm 1 in 10,000. I get that. And I was really bummed because I thought I wouldn't be able to wear the patches. But then I heard David say, just put them on the inside of your clothes. The non-adhesive side is just the opposite side of the same stuff. It's the crystal lattice structure. It's going to do the same thing. I've had tremendous benefits, even though I've only worn them on my clothing. Except for the energy enhancers that I put on the bottom of my feet, because the outer layers on the feet are dead skin cells, I don't get that histamine response and the irritation in my skin. So just a couple of pointers for those of you who have sensitive skin.
Now, the most important part of this show, we're not going to have chance to go through all the patches today, as John mentioned, because John is going to talk about 2 things that are really crucial. Now, you guys know that I've been offering, it's now the 14 pain relief protocols with Lifewave patches. Today, John is going to explain why ibuprofen and aspirin have such dangers. So people who are in pain, maybe you don't think you want to take the time to call them, text them, email them, offer to let them know about Lifewave. Now John's going to explain why, if these are people you really care about, you do want to do it. You do want to make the effort. John, give us just a brief explanation, because we have another question after this that's, rather lengthy, and we don't have that much time today. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. When I was in my chiropractic practice, we have to go to continuing ed courses every year. And early on in my practice, one of the most respected lecturers in the whole chiropractic field was talking about this very subject, ibuprofen, aspirin, all those things. I never forgot it, and I told most of my patients about it. He said, if you take 3,500 of those pills, whatever they are, aspirin, Tylenol, ibuprofen, 3,500 lifetime dose, That's only 3 a day for about 4.5 years. So he said, your chances of kidney failure go through the roof because of how hard they are on to try to detox your body of those. Let me talk about aspirin. We've all heard about, yeah, take a baby aspirin a day for your cardiovascular disease. Anytime you start to mess around with your clotting ability, you start to tip the scales. So in the middle, you have to have enough ability to clot so that your cardiovascular system, when it gets leaks, because your heart's pumping 100,000 times a day, and your arteries go like this, and they get little fissures in them. You have to be able to clot it, fix it, done. If you can't do that, what happens is you get a leak. That's called a stroke. So you have this situation where someone's telling you about, clotting. You might get a clot. So they tell you to take a baby aspirin, which affects your ability to clot. So now, for every percentage you have less of clotting, you gain a percentage of bleeding out. You have this fine line between that. And by the way, the whole study about taking an aspirin a day was based on a flawed study in the 60s. They had all the doctors in America and Britain take a baby aspirin, and they measured from that the increase or decrease in cardiovascular disease. In Britain, there was no change. In America, there was a slight change. But Bayer aspirin has magnesium in it. It was most likely the magnesium that made their hearts run better. That's it. End of story. It is.
Don't do it.
Nothing. It's based
Don't
on.
do it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. Now,
so you got to help your friends get rid of their pain somewhere else.
Exactly. We have an epidemic of antidepressants, not only an epidemic of over-the-counter stuff that has side effects. We know that all the medication that humans take has a toxicity effect on their body, and specifically on the liver. We've talked about glutathione in many of the shows that John has done for me. Now let's talk about what you explained to me, John, about brain waves and antidepressants, SSRIs, etc.
Sure. That is something that I deal with every day. My practice, Clear Mind, Idaho, we help people with brain things. And interesting, like about 3 or 4 years ago, there was one of the hospitals wanted to have somebody come and lecture about this topic. And they didn't have anybody in either hospital who was certified in reading QEEGs. So I got to go teach this class to social workers. And I showed them a list of what changes are made in our brain waves from taking these prescription drugs. Each drug is specifically targeting one or more of the brain waves to either increase it or decrease it. And then you get changes in neurotransmitters. What we do is change it without those, but specifically, here's an example. SSRIs, so popular. Those decrease delta, theta, and alpha waves and increase our beta waves in everybody who takes them. The different outcomes come when somebody already has one of them that's either too low or too high, and now it gets pushed further lower in activity or increases in activity. This is why the doctors have them come back and say, well, how'd you do? Well, yeah, I want to kill myself. Oh, well, that's probably not a good one. Let's try this one. So it's kind of a crapshoot. And I asked the question of all these social workers when I told them some things like that. And I said, shouldn't prescribers order a QEEG to find out what's too high or too low? And they looked at each other and, of course, but nobody does it. So that's what happens with those different types of drugs. And then one more thing on this topic. When in my studies for my certification in that, one of the instructors said the following sentence, and I hope you get out of it what I got out of it. When he said someone's beta waves increase in power between 15 and 21 hertz. You don't even have to know what that means. They're angry. So it's not their personality. Someone who's short to anger, their beta waves are firing. They're already over firing as if like somebody else who isn't that way. When we get angry, that bandwidth of brain waves goes up and it creates anger. It's appropriate to get angry. It says it in the Bible. It's a time for everything. But if it's running too hot, then they're like half a second away from 100 miles an hour, anger. So we actually can have an effect with the patches. The X39, just start there. It's shown that it decreases within 12 minutes. It decreases aggression in the mouse study that they did. It decreases anxiety. How does it do that? Well, it has an effect on the brainwaves magnitude, the power of, you look at these motors, they either got too much power, just the right power, or not enough. If they have too much power, you're going to get more of whatever that area of the brain processes, some kind of change wherever it's coming from.
So have you done any before and after EEGs with people, like even yourself or your family members?
We don't do the EEGs anymore. I did it for 5 years, but stopped doing that before the patches came along, because a newer, more advanced system came along where we don't have to train the brain. It actually jumps to the primitive brain.
What's that called?
IS is abbreviation. It's actually the Greek word for healing unit, but IA, S is in Sam, I, S is in Sam, ISIS microcurrent. So it untrains the brainstem from the faulty pattern that it's stuck in. So we don't have to do those EEGs anymore to get the protocols to decide what goes down and what goes up. It just regulates the whole brain.
Which is a slightly different question. I know we're about 2 minutes to the end of the show. Okay. But the quick question is, so if we see a difference in 15 to 21 hertz, we see that people are angry. We see that this is obviously not what we thought was the cause of the anger. It's a whole other thing. It has to do with brain waves, right? Mm-hmm. And so then you're talking about the X39, the Eon. When we get the nirvana back, what else, if anything, would to detox, they should use the glutathione. What else? Carnosine if they're older. Yeah,
carnosine. But what age is considered older? I use the carnosine every day.
No, but I mean, not maybe some. I'm thinking of somebody who's about 20 years old right now, who's got brain issues.
I see. Yeah. No, that would be a really good protocol. X39 is what I would start with. The studies that have been done on X39, and these are some of the things that I'm putting in my book that are outside of Lifewave. They have found changes in the brain, and that's that study that we were going to show those slides on. That Lifewave didn't do it, but a study was done using QEEG, showing that it helped with brain regulation in all of the participants in a measurement called coherence. Maybe we could do that at a different
next show.
Yeah,
our next show. Because there's always going to be a next show with you, Dr. Harmon. That's for sure.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you so much for this amazing information. And I want to let everybody know, we have 44 shows on my YouTube channel already. This will be the 45th. This show will be posted within 10 days. so you can share it with your friends. Please be sure to send me an email if you want the 14 pain relief protocols, the all patch poster, all the other things that I've been sending out. And I keep sending out more things as we have more things to send. And if Lifewave is brand new to you, be sure to get back with your friend who told you about them, your friend who told you about this show, so he or she can make sure you buy the patches, because it's only when you put them on, and you put them on every day, and you take them off after 12 hours, that you can begin to have the life-changing results that I talk about, John talks about, and all of my guests talk about. Now, our next show is the second Thursday in August, and I look forward to seeing you then. And again, I'm Susan Allen, susan@susanallen.org. That's ALLAN.org. And you'll have all of Dr. John Harmon's contact information on the description of this show, and it's already there on the previous shows. There's a playlist just of my many, 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 many Lifewave shows. So thank you so much for joining us today. Again, John, you are a joy and a gift. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
See you in 4 weeks, everybody. Bye-bye.